Hey, this is Mark Thompson. I'm the voice of Yoda in many of the Star Wars audiobooks, and you are listening to Eugenie.
Welcome to the Living Force Podcast.
I am Queen Amidala. This is my decoy, my protection, my loyal bodyguard.
A Utini production.
You Jedi are far too reckless.
Episode 41, Queen Shadow Roundtable, Take 3, Part 2.
We are brave, Your Highness.
On this episode, watching the rise of Skywalker in the theater again.
Clean this droid up as best you can.
Delays in upcoming EU projects.
Will not condone a course of action that will lead us to war.
And the Utini crew continues their discussion of Queen Shadow by E.K. Johnston.
Thank you, Ambassador. But my place is with my people.
And now, here are your hosts, Eric Eilerson and Dr. Charles Hankel.
I know you're recording in a different location than usual.
I am. Yeah, Nicole is home, but she is not feeling so well, so I let her have the room.
Aww.
She's resting, and I'm out in the main area. Figured I'd give this a whirl. So Coda might make an appearance.
Oh, please, man, it's a whole new day.
Yeah.
It's a whole new universe, my friend. Because we are back for the Living Force episode 41. Welcome, everyone, to part 2 of our Queen Shadow Roundtable series. I am one of your hosts, Eric Eilerson, and with me is one of the doctors, Dr. Charles Hankel. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, man, I'm doing fine. Right on cue, we've got an ambulance. You know,
Oh, it's so good.
it never ends.
There it goes.
It never ends.
It doesn't. So because we had so much fun with all three of us last week, we decided to say, screw that. Let's go back to only having 2. If you listen to our bounty hunt episode that either is out or will be coming out soon, Corey and I are on that episode, and we talk a little bit about the craziness that has been your guys' schedules. But you had a day off today, fully.
I did. So I am rested and recharged and ready to hop back into Queen's Shadow.
Couldn't want you any other way. So a couple quick updates for us, because we're going to spend most of this episode all about the Queen's Shadow to get you guys all caught up. I wanted to let you guys know, last weekend I saw The Rise of Skywalker for the 5th time. And I think my final time. That was it. And if you've listened to our episode where we reviewed the film, a lot of my main points still stick.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at the end of my 5th film, I walked out being like, yeah, okay, moving on, you know? It's weird. It already kind of feels like it's in the past, doesn't it?
It does. There was so much Star Wars in such a short time period that was coming out, and now I feel like we're in that weird, like, I don't know, the immediate aftermath of all of that, and it's just, like, oddly quiet, as long as you stay off of Twitter, that is.
Right.
And, yeah, I mean, it's just letting all of that kind of soak in. It's so hard to have, like, firm opinions on these things. You know, you really have to let them kind of rest, and you got to let yourself marinate in that Star Wars goodness. And I think, you know, I probably won't get around to seeing Rise of Skywalker in theaters again, but I'm still forming opinions on it, and I probably will be for years.
Absolutely. And speaking of Twitter, there was a little hubbub this week because some people posted screenshots that their Audible pre-orders for the Rise of Skywalker novelization had been delayed indefinitely. And there was panic in the streets, Charles.
Yeah.
People were screaming. People were freaking out. And the Star Wars book Twitter, Del Rey, came in and said, nope, it's not delayed. Don't know what that problem is. We'll check it out. So, amazingly, we're fine.
A weird subset of Twitter, man, that I think exists to just try to make people panic that projects that they're excited about are not going according to plan. Like, we saw this with the Obi-Wan series. We saw this now with the novelization for Tross. It's just nonsense, man. Listen, we've got great stories coming down the line. They may get moved a week or whatever, one way or the other. But you know what? We're going to get them, and they're going to be fantastic. So everyone just hang on to your hats. It's going to be fine. It's going to get here.
Exactly. And speaking of one of those things that did get delayed, Queen's Peril, the prequel to this book we're talking about, Queen Shadow, did get delayed a while back by 1 month till June to make way for Thrawn.
Yeah, which is good. It was like the same. Was it a day apart or the same day?
It was the same day.
I mean, that was bound to get moved.
It was. Luckily, however, those advanced reader copies already went out 4.5 months early. I finished mine this past weekend.
I'm so jealous.
And naturally, I cannot say anything about it.
Yeah, but I saw you tweeting with E.K. Johnston.
I did. We chatted a bit. I, got to basically tell her how anguished I am that I have to hold these secrets for 4.5 months.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown, Eric.
You know it, baby. And she was like, yeah, that's how it happens. And I, made a coded statement about one of the moments that really got to me. And she's like, I know exactly what you're talking about. So all I can say is you really want to go to utini.com and pre-order that book if you haven't already. Because, you just should pre-order it. That's all I got. That's all I can do. And I'm really going to try to make sure my head stays separate in this roundtable from information that I know from Queen's Shadow and information I know from Queen's Peril. So we'll make sure that is solid. But if you are new to this show, and because you like some Queen's Shadow, you've been searching around for some Padme podcasts, welcome. Don't forget to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts and tune in every single week where us at Utini will talk about the Star Wars Expanded Universe. And if you haven't already, my friends, my followers, my loved ones, please leave us a review on iTunes to help people find us. Just a couple words saying how much you love the show, and head over to utini.com where we do have reviews, articles, and book profiles on every story in the Star Wars galaxy. Now, speaking of those reviews, Charles, the reviews on the site just keep coming for books, but we're not going to read any this week. We have too much Queen's Shadow to get to. So listeners, I hope you forgive us. But, I mean, those notifications have been going off this week. I mean, we got some from Catalyst. We got some. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm enjoying reading them too because honestly, as much as we might influence some of our listeners in their opinions or their thoughts on certain projects, there are things getting reviewed that I haven't gotten around to yet. And so in reverse, our listeners are getting me excited about certain stories that I'm moving on up my list.
Absolutely. And if you want to review your books and get them read on this show, all you got to do is look up that book on utini.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page, and add your star rating 1 out of 5 and your user review. You can also email us at livingforcepod@utini.com, tweet at us at livingforcepod, or join the Discord community that is bopping every day by going to utini.com/discord. A couple other updates for Utini before we jump into Padme. As I mentioned earlier, there should be a new episode of Bounty Hunt coming up very soon. Corey and I recorded an episode all about the Clone Wars Seasons 1 through 3 to get us ready for Season 7 coming out in less than a month. There is a new Legends Look Back episode up where they talk about the books Order 66 and 501st, finishing up the Republic Commando saga. Our own Meg Dowell was on that episode. Massive love to Meg. And they did a great freaking job with that series. If you want some more Mando lore in your life and some clones, you got to get on that. And the next book for that Patreon exclusive series is going to be Legends Look Back. Or no, for Legends Look Back is Splinter of the Mind's Eye. I can't read my own outline. Splinter of the Mind's Eye, that's right, the first extended universe novel. And you can order it right now in time for that show on its book profile at utini.com. Final thing that went up on Patreon probably next week, or that will go up, Corey and I recorded the council meeting, the monthly Q&A. That goes up to our Inquisitorious members and above. We had a good old time just rattling off some questions all about Star Wars, the expanded lore, Corey's hometown. It was a great time. So definitely look for that on your Patreon feed. And if you want all of that exclusive content, join us on Patreon. For $2 a month, you're a Jedi Initiate. You get this show 1 day early. For $5 a month, you're Guardian of the Wills. You get Legends Look Back, and you get Bounty Hunt, and it goes on and on and on. Whew. All right, busy as always, man. But it's been a good week, I think, despite all the scheduling you guys have had to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sad I've missed a couple of those shows, but I mean, I'm excited to listen to them too. Is just get myself ready for this Clone Wars and all of that.
It's going to be very awesome. But before all that happens, my friends, with Clone Wars, we are going to dive right back into E.K. Johnston's 2019 hit, Queen's Shadow. If you listened to last week's episode, as I hope you did before this one, we talked about the characters, specifically the handmaidens. We each gave our own score for the book at the start. And today, Charles has written up a bunch of questions that we're going to go over, and I'm excited to listen to them. I'm excited to answer them. So, Charles, let's talk more about Queen Shadow.
All right, man. So many questions, so little time, but we're going to do the best that we can. So as you know, last week we talked about all the characters. We ended talking a whole lot about Padme, and now we're going to kind of do these overarching questions that have a lot to do with some plot points. And I want to start off with the place that makes the most sense to start off, and that's the very beginning. So I want to talk about how E.K. Johnston opened up this book and closed this book with some parallel scenes. Basically, what she did was open the book, and it seemed very much like she was describing Padme's funeral, but in fact she was just floating on a pool, and then used the exact same wording at the end of the book to actually talk about Padme's funeral. What were your thoughts on that? I thought that was incredibly creative.
I really loved that. I mean, any fan that has watched the prequel movies a good amount of times is going to know exactly the imagery that she was going for at the top. I thought starting the book off with that bait and switch was so fun and really puts us off base and shows that, one, E.K. Johnston has done her research, which is evident throughout this book, but that she's got the imagery down perfectly. And it says, all right, we're going to go in some weird places. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work. And by the end of the book, when she brings it back, it's kind of a beautiful bookend, literally, to kind of sandwich this whole story together with one of the most iconic moments of Padme's journey.
Yeah, I got to tell you, listening to the audiobook reading of the actual ending of this book, Padme's funeral, was pulling at my heartstrings, man. Really struck me the way that Johnston was able to describe that scene and the flowers in Padme's hair and all of these things. I mean, it really got me. It did. So yeah, props to her. And I got to tell you too, Eric, I've been drinking out of that mug that you got me for Utini's Secret Santa, and I was looking through. So for anyone that wasn't in on the Christmas party, it is a Padme mug, and it has all of Padme's different outfits on it. And I was looking at them the other day, and the last one is Padme's funeral outfit, and
that's perfect.
It really got me.
Man, because it's such an iconic moment in a really great movie. I mean, I think pretty unanimously thought of as the best prequel movie, at least some people's favorite movie out of all of them, and a movie that ends in such darkness to end with a sad moment that is still filled with so much beauty and so much, like, you know, it's really aesthetically pleasing while still being very somber, and it kind of represents the end of an age. Like, Padme's death is the final kind of stroke in the beginning of the Empire, and that image was burned in all of our brains so instantly in the theater, and has been on rewatch, and it's not any easier listening to Catherine Tabor describe it.
No, it certainly isn't. But let's try to move on from that sadness. I want to talk about a few things. Now, on this show, we always are open and honest about the things that we love and the things that we didn't like as much. And there are a couple of things that I want to bring up towards the beginning of this episode. Some things that maybe I didn't like quite as much. And I want to see how they struck you. And then I basically want to run through a million things that I loved about this book.
Let's do it.
So a couple of sticking points for me. I just want to break these down. Number one, we talked about all the deleted scenes from the prequels last week and how so much of that was pulled into this book. And so I want to ask you, did it bother you at all that it seems like Johnston's story mostly came from material that was already out there? Or were you hoping to have more original material? Did you even realize while you were reading it that pretty much all of this was already come up with?
I think it's more the latter of what you said. I didn't realize as I was going through that not a lot of it was from her mind. Like it's kind of like seeing a great editor at work. Like they're taking all these disparate things and making a cohesive story together. And when I was reading it, I was like, oh, this all flows very well. It all flows very well. And then when I discovered all the deleted scenes and stuff that had been mentioned, all the references that were in Clone Wars and stuff, instead of feeling, I guess, slighted, as I guess you could, by like, oh, I thought this was all going to be original, I felt kind of like, oh my gosh, how cool that she got to do all this, and I was amazed at how well it all worked together, So I liked it because it felt kind of like a lot of the loose bricks being put together into a solid construction.
Yeah,
from my point of view.
Yeah, I think it's cool actually because the deleted scenes in and of themselves, like, those aren't canon, right? Because like they weren't in the film, but she's taking a lot of material,
which is so testy about deleted scenes, right? Like there's, in most films it's just kind of cool stuff, but everyone's talking about what deleted scenes will be on The Rise of Skywalker. That gets tough because on Star Wars it's like, wait, then are those technically canon? Because a lot of times they were cut for non-story reasons,
right.
Because of timing or because of lighting or whatever. But in Star Wars, it has such an effect because it affects the whole story. So her decision to say, nope, this is legit canon now, I thought was pretty bold.
It was, and I think she salvaged a lot of Padme's story that, like I mentioned last week, was kind of left on the editing room floor. So that's I think it's cool. And to be fair, E.K. Johnston was somewhat handcuffed with this book because we do know the ultimate fate of almost every character, from Padme to Clovis to Bonteri to Organa. Like, we know what happens. So with that,
it's the prequel curse of, like, how do you keep stakes high?
Exactly.
By, like, and I think that's the brilliant thing about her use of Sabe is, like, okay, we saw this character, we technically didn't see what happens to her at the end,
right.
So that's open-ended, but at the same time, she's important enough that she's interesting to read.
Right.
And I think that could be very hard.
Well, so do you feel then like these prequel era books are, I don't want to say doomed to fail. That's what's coming to mind right now, but that's like so strong. All right, do you feel like it's an issue, though, that we know the fate of these characters, or are you having fun seeing how much can be expanded on without contradicting what we know?
Oh, it's definitely the latter on that. I think that the risk that they take is that bad writers won't be able to do it. I think it's harder, probably, honestly, to keep a story that has high stakes when characters are going to survive. But then I think you need to have other stakes that don't just involve death.
Sure.
I think that death doesn't have to be the only end for any character. So there's the creative issue, right? Like with Master and Apprentice, we knew Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were going to survive that story, but Claudia Gray infused that story with so many stakes because of the planet, because of the new characters, and like it's probably harder to impose those stakes on pre-existing characters, but I think that challenge is part of what makes it so rewarding when it does work very well.
Sure.
And as Star Wars fans, we are reading for expansion, literally the expanded universe, right? That's kind of our goal. So we're excited to put another piece in the puzzle. We know the puzzle will never quite be finished.
Well, I sure hope not. Even with the end of the Skywalker saga, right? Okay. All right. So now my last big sticking point that I just got to have this conversation up front with you, and I think you probably know what it is. But I want to talk about one of the pivotal scenes in this book, one of the pivotal plot points in this book that just didn't make sense to me. And that is, why did Mon Mothma, the mastermind of the rebellion, throw a fake party to have a conversation with the exact same people she already speaks privately with in the Senate building? Why couldn't they just meet like that again? Why? Like, I know it created a dramatic situation. It was fun to read about. Padme got to sneak around and wear a disguise, but what?
So, I've now read this book fully twice, talked about it a lot, and I've thought about this because we talked about this a year ago, and I didn't quite figure it out. And I think I've come on to a point now where I think Mon Mothma at this point still has to play the part a little bit. At this point in the Republic, still at this time, Bail Organa and Mon Mothma are like kind of troublemakers a little bit, but they're still senators. They're still very respected. Mm-hmm. They're still like dutiful citizens or whatever, right? So I think at that point she's still got to have these public events to kind of keep her power in the Senate and keep people going. And I think this was also a little bit of a test to see if Padme could handle herself. They wanted to see how that was going to work. And at the end of the day, I think it's keeping the balancing act. Because if it's all clandestine meetings, then you're going to kind of fall into the trap of, okay, they're always sneaking off. There's always secret alliances. But if you're having these large parties and you're having these big gatherings, it's like, no, I'm not the Senate, but I am still a big, powerful voice in the Senate. So I think she's still playing the part. She's still playing the game, which I think people like Mon Mothma and Bail Organa and Padme eventually all do really well, and we don't really see elsewhere in Star Wars. So I think that's also a reason why it kind of takes us back a bit, because it is so unknown. You know, we don't get to see this kind of political grandstanding, because for the most part in the EU, whenever you get into politics, it's the evil empire, or it's like the crumbling Senate, or the burgeoning new rebellion.
Sure.
So that's where I got
Do you
with
think,
it, I think.
Then do you think that people were wrong? I can't remember exactly who brings everything up, but basically Padme comes to the conclusion that she's been invited as Queen Amidala to serve as a distraction so that they can go have their conversation. But that really wasn't necessary,
totally.
was it?
Whether it was necessary or not, I'm not sure. But I think that that's absolutely was the plan.
But why?
Because,
Why did they
all
need that? That's what I don't understand.
Because if she's hosting the party, right?
Then
eyes are on her, and
don't
there's
have
so
this
many
conversation
cameras.
while hosting a party. And Bail Organa is already wearing something on his belt that keeps the cameras from flying anywhere near them. Problem solved.
I don't know. Maybe, but if all the cameras are off of you the entire night, then people get suspicious.
Okay, but not when they're off
think you
long enough
needed
to
to-
talk to Padme. They already did. He had a private conversation with Padme at the party, which they could have done
after she was
anyways.
already providing distraction, after like the big event of her arriving had happened.
Sure, that's fair. But this also could have just happened in the Senate building when they already meet with her. That's
true.
my sticking point.
You know what that is? It's boring.
It is. No, I agree. Like, the actual scene in and of itself was fun. It was definitely fun. I just struggled a little bit with understanding why it didn't feel
and I think it's
forced.
also like, why in every book that's like, you know, like a Scoundrels type book, do they need to go to the auction where the data is being, like, you know, released? Why don't they just break into the place in the middle of the night when everyone's asleep and steal the stuff? You know, it's like that classic heist thing, because the auction is way more fun and it's way more exciting to have to go through all these things for story. You know, why doesn't Anakin just force push Obi-Wan off the thing on Mustafar into the lava?
True. Okay. All right.
You know.
All right.
So I think that yes and yes. I think this is the case of both factions being like, this is why it has to happen, but that's also why they probably could have just like written notes to each other.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I like your explanation. And I want to move on. I want to move on from that. I want to talk about all the things that I really love about this book, because it's a lot, and it's a lot longer of a list this time, having read the book, than the first time that I read the book.
Which is also so interesting, because I know a lot of us on the team don't actively reread a lot of books because there's so much content, which is great. But like taking the time to reread something you've already read means you're not going back to read an older book, or you're maybe not catching up to new stuff, which is hard, especially for those of us that want to keep current. So I think this reread was actually really important to me as well, Charles, because I found stuff that I loved this time as well even more, and I was like, oh, damn, should I be rereading a lot more books that I didn't like as well?
Yeah, it made me wonder. It really did, that maybe I should go back and revisit a few. But, you know, thanks to the patrons that made this happen, that kind of had us put this book back on our radar, and
thank you,
now
guys.
here we are. So, all right. So E.K. Johnson did something really interesting with this book, and that is she took what a lot of people consider to be weaknesses of the prequels and actually highlighted them in this book.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, the kind of stiff Victorian dialogue was very prominent, or the monotone voice that Amidala uses in the movies apparently was quite intentional. Like, that was a voice that she specifically used as Amidala. Were you hoping to see something different, or were you really pleased to see that Johnston kind of stayed the course?
I really dug it, honestly, because I think that with the prequels, it's such an interesting time for prequels. We've talked about this on a few episodes, because we're at a time where a lot of us that grew up as kids with the prequels are now in our 20s and 30s and stuff, and are like, cool, we're ready for more mature content involving this time period because we still have such good memories from it.
Yeah.
And because of that, I don't want anyone to apologize for story, because then you're kind of shitting on your own universe, right? Which is weird. It's not nice. So instead, it's like, hey, you know what's going to be cool? this thing you thought was an accident, yeah, we'll flip it on its head. We'll make it intentional, which is one of the fun things about Star Wars. That's one of the cool things you can do. So I loved the idea that this voice was something that all the handmaidens were like, well, Amidala's got this voice, and it's going to be proper, and it's going to be something that Padme can do, and it's going to be something that Sabe can do. And it's like, all right, that's why we use it, because it's a tool to distract and to like neutralize and stuff like that. I really liked that choice, and like taking all the outfits and being like, yeah, it was really cool to have them in the film, but then here's all the cool stuff they can do with them, and here's the point behind it all. And it's the more I think about this book, the more I think like, did it just use the word expanded universe better than most others?
Yeah, I mean, I think this book particularly excelled in incorporating things that we know to be true or that we consider to be true or fact, and looking at them with a brand new lens and not contradicting anything, but giving us a better understanding. And I think that's really special, actually. Now, I want to bring you to the first quote that I have for the night. It was early on. It was on page 8. And it reads...
Getting my hymnal?
There you go. It reads as follows. No matter how many times they were proven able, people who looked at them were blinded by their youth and by their clothing and dismissed them yet again. That was exactly how they preferred it. I mean... That's
the coolest thing about this book. And, like, honestly, like, this burgeoning series to me is... It is such an epic, like, screw you to anyone that looks down on people because they're young, or down on young women, or people because they like to dress up. Like, it's all the stereotypical things that a lot of, Star Wars fans we don't quite care for will, like, make fun of or talk down about, and it's say, no, this is the power, and because you're ignoring it, you're gonna get screwed.
Yeah.
And that's, like, the brilliance of it. And to start that off, like you said, on page 8 is, like, damn.
It really sets the tone.
Right.
And the entire book after that just doubles down and doubles down and doubles down on it. And so I think E.K. Johnson really just called her shot early on and then followed it up. And
here's my book. And, like, they're going to take you down because they're a great team.
Yeah, I mean,
and I don't think it...
That could have been her pitch.
Ahead.
That literally, those two sentences could have been her pitch for this book.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's a fascinating idea because she somehow balances writing them as honest, teenage girls. They're all like, 17, 18 at this point in this book. So it's honestly written. They're not written as 30-somethings, like, which could be, they're not like the Glee teenagers that are all 28 playing high schoolers. But also at the same time, they are written with such power, and she never deviates from that. She lets them be human, but also powerful. And it's like, you read it, and you think, oh, wait, do I just assume that younger women can't be powerful? And is that why I'm confused? And then it's like, wait, I should re-examine that about myself, because this seems pretty natural. So, it kind of has that bigger idea to it. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this book challenges some real-world views that people probably have. And in another vein, it also challenges some views that I think we as Star Wars fans may have had of things that happen in the prequel films themselves. And one thing in particular that I'm curious about is if this book changed at all how you viewed Padme's actions in The Phantom Menace. Because I thought it was incredibly interesting to see that there were other senators who felt like Padme basically circumvented the Senate, called for a vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum, and then just ran back to Naboo, and they were all just left in the wake of this chaos. And, not to mention that all of that led up to the senator from her own planet being named the new chancellor. Like, I never thought about it in that way, but I can't remember if it was Bonteri or Mon Mothma. One of them, brought that point up in this book, and, like, I was floored.
Absolutely. I have honestly wanted to, like, I've had the urge to watch The Phantom Menace ever since finishing this book.
Yeah.
Which tells you a lot about the book itself, because The Phantom Menace isn't one of my favorites, but it does paint it all in a new light. It makes you think, okay, I can see how people could view that. I can see how the propaganda machine, which is also really well represented in this book, right?
Yeah.
Like all the little chapter headings about the media kind of trying to spin it around and make her look weak and make her look like she only cares about her planet, and how, Bale and Mon Mothma say, people think you only care about Naboo. And she's like, why is that bad? They go, no, you got to play the game.
Right.
And I can totally see how people can think that based on her actions, even though it's so clear all her actions are altruistic at heart. They're all for helping people. And honestly, at the end of the day, I think one of the sad truths of the prequels is that it is that desire and that love for others and that selflessness that kind of aids in her downfall at the end. Because she, at the end of the day, with Anakin, just wants to help him and wants to love him and wants to take care of him and figure out how they can have their life together. She's not playing the larger game. She's not thinking about galactic politics. She's not thinking about Siths. And unfortunately, because of that, I think it leads into her blindness on how far he's gone down the wrong path. So having it start with this element of, becoming the senator that just wanted to take over the Senate and having her be on the defensive from the start was a really stark choice. And next time I watch Phantom Menace and then Attack of the Clones, I'm definitely going to have that in mind.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have that in mind, in particular when she calls for that vote of no confidence, and just seeing Valorum sit down and look so defeated. I mean, again,
we know why it's a good idea.
Oh, for sure.
But the other senators are like, okay, I've had war on my planet all the time.
Yeah.
What?
I mean, think about how massive that Senate chamber is, and each one of those little pods represents one planet or one system, and they probably I mean, exactly right what you're saying. They're probably like, who cares that there's a blockade on your planet? We have other issues that we need to attend to. You roll in here and basically cut the head of the Senate off and then just leave. Just drop the mic and leave. That's insane.
Yeah.
So I am going to look at that differently.
Wild. Yeah, and especially when, she decides to leave early to go to Alderaan for a bit and be like, cool, this is hard, I did some work, but everyone's yelling at me, peace out. I'm gonna go for a bit. And again, being in her head, we understand it, which I think might be a greater commentary as well on all these other characters. If we think their actions might be rash, we think their actions might not necessarily make sense, maybe they got a lot more going on and they need a book as well.
Bring it on all the books. I'm ready.
Yes, please.
Now, talking about some of Padme's views from the Phantom Menace, there's a line, or a couple of lines rather, that really struck me from page 159, and I'm going to read them here to you. It says, Padme looked past the shining lights of Coruscant's wealthy upper levels and down into the poorer, more dangerous parts of the city planet. She couldn't see very far. She had the idea that was how Coruscant liked it. Naboo had tried that once, dividing the population against itself, and the result had been almost world-ending. Padme resolved to pay attention, not just listen, and not just look, but see. I thought that was beautiful, one. Two, I never would have drawn that parallel about thinking about those lower levels of Coruscant, those bowels of Coruscant, correlating to how the Gungans were living in the lakes on Naboo, and then up above it you have just the palace of Theed and all the wealth up there, and all the people who just seem to not care about the Gungans at all. And for Padme to recognize that, I think it makes sense with her backstory, but two, I think it really speaks to her character in that she's looking for these injustices and she's looking to correct them. Even when you have an entire planet that is just one giant city, and you would think that this is so obvious to everyone that's there, it's not. But she sees it. She sees right to the heart of the issue.
Yeah, and, we see that in Phantom Menace when she's talking to Anakin, and she goes, you're a slave? Because she's so confused as to what that concept is because she doesn't see it at home. And then every new thing that she is met with, every new injustice, as you said, I really enjoy how she kind of takes it, learns from it, and then tries to fix it. Takes it, learns from it, tries to fix it. Again, sometimes to her detriment. Sometimes, she tries so hard and she feels every loss, which I think a lot of politicians kind of separate themselves from. But this moment especially is so impactful because it shows, how big her capacity is to empathize with those that she doesn't even know. I mean, she uses a personal experience with the Gungans to attribute that same compassion and thought to quadrillions of people that she'll never meet. In Coruscant, I think this passage is also great because Johnston opens up our eyes to kind of the sick machinations of that planet. It's definitely intentional that it's so busy. It's definitely intentional that it is trying to overwhelm you with stimulation so you don't think about the people on the lower levels. It's very clearly divided. There's tons of books that all take place on Coruscant that are all about that. And for Padme to be able to look through it and see the secrets as a new senator, as a young person, kind of the same way that Bail is able to just look through her disguise and see her, speaks to two of the most compassionate and intelligent people in the Senate.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have put that better myself. And you mentioned about Padme being faced with slavery for the first time in The Phantom Menace, and we see that idea come up a lot in this book as well. We see Padme sending Sabe off to try to go free slaves on Tatooine now that she's aware of that injustice from everything that happened in The Phantom Menace. We also see her trying to get involved on a senatorial level, and we see her kind of getting boxed out of that area of policy by Palpatine. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about that and hear your thoughts on it, because I wasn't really clear if Palpatine, is he really in the know enough that he was intentionally doing this, keeping her out of any of that policy because he thought she could really make a change there?
That's exactly what I read into it. And I think that ultimately that respect by Palpatine to say, if Padme is on this committee, she is so good at this already that she could possibly set things in motion that could free Shmi Skywalker, bring her back, and stop Anakin from going down the dark path and destroy his entire plans for the history of the Sith, is nuts. It's amazing. It's the idea that Padme is such an important character that possibly the most powerful Sith Lord of all time is kind of afraid of her political savvy and her drive speaks volumes. Just that little motion. Once you read those passages and realize that Palpatine is just saying, "Oh no, you're not going to be in those committees," and really trying to smooth talk her around it.
Right.
You can tell he's afraid, and this is not a guy that ever gets afraid. And the fact that he's afraid of Padme above all and is worried about Padme more than Mon Mothma, more than Bail, more than anyone else, speaks more than honestly an entire other book could.
Yeah, I love that. And when I was looking at it, I was really thinking of it more as, Palpatine needs there to be these social injustices so that he can, further kind of draw these lines in between people and cause them to fight each other so that they don't notice what he's doing. But I didn't even think to the point that he was doing this specifically because of Shmi Skywalker. So that's a really interesting thought, that he was manipulating things down to that small of a level, galaxy-wide policy to keep one person enslaved to ensure that Anakin would fall to the dark side. That is just mind-blowing.
And I think what you say is also definitely true. The idea of him further dividing, and whether this minutia is necessarily intentional, who could speak to it? But the fact that you can easily draw the line is so much fun. And what are Star Wars books other than trying to have the most fun possible, right?
Connecting the dots is what all of this is about. Even if it's just your head canon, it's so fun to figure those things out.
Absolutely. Well, hey, speaking of those dots, at this point, we're going to take a real fast break, my friends. Let you kind of bathe in the warm water that is that realization about the power of Padme in the face of Palpatine, and we will be right back.
Hey, Living Forest listeners, it's Jared here, host of Legends Look Back. What's better than a Wookiee? That's right, a Wookiee with a lightsaber. I just want to take a second to share my love for one of the best characters in the Legends books, and that's Chewbacca's Jedi nephew, Lowbacca. Lowie is one of the supporting characters from the Young Jedi Knights series, a student at Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy on Yavin 4. In the books, he has one defining character trait, and that he's a tech whiz, always ready and able to slice into a security system or fix a ship. The trouble is, of course, the other characters are not so great at speaking Shiriwook. Well, to solve the problem, Lobaka has his own personal mini protocol droid, MTD, strapped to his belt to help make sense of his growls to all of his little Jedi friends. One of the weird things is that he wields a bronze lightsaber, but it mostly looks red on the book covers. He, at one point, even joined an anti-human terror organization, but we won't talk too much about that. After the Young Jedi Knights, he goes on to have a supporting role in the New Jedi Order series as Jaina's loyal mechanic, always ready with a listening ear through Jaina's many struggles through her love triangle with Zek and Jag Fell. You see, Lobaka's the stable, loyal successor to Chewbacca's lineage and a fierce fighter, and you should totally check him out. After all, like Jaina, we all need somebody to have our backs, especially when that somebody is a Wookiee with a life debt and a lightsaber. Enjoy the rest of the show. May the Force be with you.
And we are back! Ugh. Mid-show clips, mid-rolls, joy, handmaidens. We got it all, folks. Charles, where were we talking about our favorite possible savior of the galaxy? Were it not for, like, this book, dude, made me so doubly, triply, quadruply sad that Padme's gone. Because even what we were just talking about with the fact that she is the linchpin that could have potentially stopped Palpatine's rise or Vader's fall, like, if she had only gotten on a committee or had only, like, found Shmi and, like, you know, the fact that she has that much influence is incredible.
It is, and that's something that we're going to come back around to in a little while. I have my own little Charles's Stupid game, and
yes! Oh my god! And the thing is, listeners, I'm not looking at an outline right now. Only Charles has the prompt, so I'm going to be so surprised. I love it.
Listen, Eric and I have already talked for 4 hours probably about this book, so I didn't think that he needed an outline. And also, I've been like flying by the seat of my pants for this, so it's both of those. But yeah, so we were talking about basically what could have derailed Padme from causing major changes galaxy-wide. And we talked about Palpatine, who certainly was one big factor, but I want to talk about another, and that's Padme's relationship with Anakin. Because she said something in this book that really struck me. It was painful to read this. Page 239. I believe she was talking to Sabe about potentially settling down, starting a family, and she said this: "I don't know what I'd do. I've guarded my heart against everything for so long, always aware of the dynamics and the flow of power. I've been lucky to find so many people who understand that and give me that space. I'm afraid that if someone breaks through, I'll let them, and it would be catastrophic." Where do you think that came from? Like she's absolutely right. I mean, that was basically a Jedi prophecy about her relationship with Anakin, but how in the world do you think that she rightly predicts that if she gets into a relationship, it would lead to catastrophe?
I think she, at this point, has so much wherewithal, because she's been in the political game for 4 years, right? She had her terms as queen, and now she's rocking out the senator life. She's been around it long enough to know that this is going to be her career, essentially. This is her life going forward, no matter what. And she hasn't let someone in on that level, I guess, until this point, right? And she's not really seeing how it's possible, doesn't see how it fits. But she also knows how empathetic she was. We were talking earlier about how she has empathy for the entirety of Coruscant, right? Mm-hmm. Without even knowing anyone. So she has so much empathy for every one of her handmaidens. She cares about them so much. I think she knows that I can feel this much for people I don't know, and even for my closest friends. I can just imagine how much I'll feel for my life partner, right? For a romantic partner. Sure. There's no way she wouldn't give her all, you know, because she doesn't have the ability to close herself off emotionally, which makes her so effective as a leader and as a queen and as a friend, but also makes her so vulnerable.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. When I read that, it really was another one of those moments that made me kind of stop and think, and it's heartbreaking to know that she rightly predicts where this is going, but still, wants to have that relationship with Anakin. And we'll probably come back around to that a little bit later on as well. But let's talk about some more heartbreaking things.
Let's go. Let's dive right into it.
You and I were just talking over the break a little bit about Queen's Peril, which we're going to steer clear of here on the actual live show. But we were talking about how bad the invasion of Naboo really was. And on page 251, we see Padme say that C.O. Bibble, one of my favorite background characters.
Amazing.
Yeah, she says that he, quote, essentially supervised a massacre. And that line also really surprised me because the Phantom Menace doesn't spend time on Naboo when the invasion is happening. It leaves with Padme. You go to Tatooine, and some bad things are going down because C.O. Bibble is sending those text messages, like, hey, guys, please help.
Contact me.
Yeah. But think about those words. Like, he supervised a massacre and he was left there to deal with that on his own. I think that's just, it's great that this book is bringing attention to that, and that Queen's Peril might do that some more.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things too about history as a whole. We name all these battles in human history as massacres or the battle of whatever, and there's a number of people that died, and it's so separate, right? Because you just remember it as an event. But then if you actually think about the definitions of these words and what actually probably happened, the invasion of Naboo, Padme grew up, and when she was queen, she had to look as an army marched down the streets, took her captive. Like, all these things happened. And if we separate them from the cool Jedi laser sword part of it, it's pretty horrific for this peace-loving people. And
Right.
I agree. I think this did a really great job of having someone that came from trauma in that way at such a young age kind of evolve. And I think that's definitely where a large part of her empathy has to come from. She, at the ripe age, it was like 14 or 15, had her planet taken over, essentially, and had to witness injustices. And, her handmaidens did the same. They talk about, Sasha's scars and stuff. And they're like, they grew up so quickly that it's easy for us to write off the quote-unquote invasion. But this book really will, like we keep saying, it'll make you watch Phantom Menace differently because you'll understand the gravity of what's happening.
Yeah, I think you're right. I can't wait to go back and watch The Phantom Menace after reading this book again. And really just see Padme's evolution with kind of new eyes. And ultimately, we know that Padme doesn't really want to be involved in all of these galactic politics. Like, she doesn't want to have to be, I should say. She just wants basically everyone to sing Kumbaya and get along. She wants to be a pacifist if she can be, but she understands that she can't be with a lot of the circumstances that are going on galaxy-wide. And she has this quiet moment with Sabe on page 273 that really struck me as well. Just yet another of the heartbreaking moments in this book. And Padme's talking to Sabe, and she says, we'll come back here, you and I. We'll do what we need to do out there, and then we'll come home. And it says, Sabe rested her head on Padme's shoulder, felt the press of Padme's cheek against her hair, and neither of them doubted it for a moment. And I mean, what do you say? Like, knowing how this ends and the epilogue and seeing how heartbroken Sabe is by things that happen. I mean, wow.
Yeah. Like we said in our previous episode, they really nail the intimacy of the friendship that they have. And I think in this way, we just talked about how difficult it can be to write prequels where we know what's happening. This is how you do it, right? That's the stuff. You put in the hope the characters have, and us as readers have the dramatic irony where we know they won't get to go back home, and we can't tell them that. And so we just have to witness it and stand by idly, and that's heartbreaking for us as well. That's why we're feeling this emotion, because when you love characters like we do in Star Wars, like you love them on the page, you love them on the screen, when bad things are going to happen to them, you want to stop those bad things because you love them. And reading that passage we know they're not going to get that relief, and we just gotta we gotta wait. We gotta stand by and watch it happen, and it's hard.
It is, and I mean, it makes you think about yourself too. I mean, these are conversations that we have day in and day out, and we don't know how our books end, and so just seeing those moments when you do know how these characters' stories ends, I mean, it's tough. It's tough, and it makes you kind of reflect on yourself as well. But
yeah,
some people though can see into the future. Jedi, for example.
Yeah,
and we got a cool Depa Billaba cameo in this book. When they went to
neat.
Bromlarch. It was cool. It's one of those Jedi who we really don't know that much about, but we got to spend some time with, and who certainly had an impact on Padme in the short time that they had together in this book. And knowing that Jedi can see somewhat, kind of, into the future, right? Can have premonitions or feelings, and I thought it was really cool to hear what Bilaba's evaluation of Padme was. And we see that on page 295. And she says, "You've not changed very much since the first time I met you." Padme wasn't entirely sure what to make of that, and it must have shown on her face, but the Jedi Master continued, "You've grown, of course. You're wiser, you are more balanced, but you haven't changed. You're still the person who took on the Trade Federation, and I think you always will be." And then it says, "It was the oddest compliment Padme had ever received, including the time a small boy on a desert world had assumed she was an angel, but she was pleased by it nonetheless. She'd been wondering about herself, about the path she would take. Jedi could see things that no one else did, and Padme trusted in their vision, as much as any non-Jedi could." There's so much to unpack there, but just what are your initial thoughts of what Bilaba said about her always being that person who takes on the Trade Federation?
That line, "You are still the person who took on the Trade Federation, and I think you always will be," is up there for, like, line of the book for me. I think it is one of the most incredible descriptions of a character that I've read in Star Wars. And I had an old acting teacher that always told me, when I'm making a character for stage, right, you read a script, and the first thing you got to do is figure out what your character says about themselves and what other characters say about you. So that's how you build this person. So to have someone like this say this about Padme tells us so much about their character, because this is a person that can see a bit of the future, like we're saying, that is honorable as far as we know, that has no reason to, flatter or insult Padme. She's just saying what she sees. And the truth of the matter of Padme being the person who took on the Trade Federation really kind of hits home, that this was a 14-year-old girl that took on an empire, and she won. Which is incredible, and something that gets lost in a lot of the, the less than stellar parts of the Phantom Menace and the prequel trilogy. We kind of forget that she did that, and the fact that she hasn't lost her convictions, that she still has empathy, which, in the eyes of a lot of the senators and the media, as this book shows, makes her weak, makes her lesser, actually makes her stronger in the eyes of a Jedi. And I also can infer by reading that passage, maybe Depa Billaba doesn't see that very often.
Which is interesting coming from a Jedi, right? I mean, you would think that she would see that all the time. That's really, Jedi should be standing for many of the same ideals that I think that Padme stands for. So that's an interesting thought. It also makes me wonder how the second bit that I read about how Padme trusted in the vision of the Jedi as much as any non-Jedi could. It makes me question how much she must have thought about Anakin's visions of the future once they were a couple.
Oh yeah, in the infamous shirtless Anakin scenes in Revenge of the Sith, or even in the more shirted ones in Attack of the Clones, right?
The lesser important ones, yes.
Right. But I think in the Revenge of the Sith specifically, when he says, "I have a vision, you die in childbirth," the fact that she believes so much in this is probably, like, terrifying for her. And she says, "I'm not going to die," and tries to reassure him. But yeah, you're right. Now on rewatch, like, she probably believes him absolutely, and she's trying to reassure and trying to help him, but she probably knows.
She may have
which
put
is
more
even
stock.
sadder.
Yeah, she may have put more stock in that than we realized.
Jeez.
Yeah, this book is heartbreaking, man.
This is hard.
This is
Like
a
the
downer.
deeper you go, the sadder it gets, man. Star Wars, as the Sky Talkers say, Star Wars is tragedy.
It is. It sure is. I want to talk about it. Just a couple more quotes I want to throw out that I think really speak to the spirit of Padme, and we don't have to spend too much time on it because we still have quite a bit to cover. But I thought these were important just to mention. When she was talking about Shada B. Borin, which still makes me laugh, but the planet where all the aliens died because their sun burnt out, essentially. Clovis asked Padme if she would go through that entire experience again, trying to save them, even though they all died. And she says, of course I would. Maybe next time one of our scientists would figure out soon enough to save someone. Maybe next time there would be survivors. I would try 1,000 times, Clovis. Even if I only ever saved one being, I would try 10,000 times. I mean, that's classic Padme. Like
That's the character.
Again, yeah, that is the character. And then again, we have on page 307, Lord and Savior Bail Organa says to Padme, I know it's a horrifying situation, but you can't fight every evil in the galaxy. And Padme responds, evil? I fought evil and it was easy. I shot it. It's apathy that I can't stand.
Man, if that ain't the line for the world we live in right now, man, like, it is so easy to identify evil when it's evil.
Yeah.
But it's so much harder to convince someone to care.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably the most meta thing about politics in this book. I think that exists. I think that it is Padme saying, how do people not see that people are people and I'm going to keep doing this fight and how dare you assume I wouldn't is also her. Even to Bail, who is a friend, who is a trusted friend,
Right. No.
She's calling him out. She's like, dude, what do you mean? Which is why, like we said in the last episode, her voice in the rebellion, can you imagine?
Oh, I can. And we're going to talk about that. But
all right.
The apathy part is really interesting because you're right. We see that every day in our real life. And this is on one planet and in many cases in one country. And we're talking about a just massive amount of planets that are in the Senate. And it's incredibly easy to see how one could become apathetic to the struggles of other planets and other populations and other species because it must feel so far away to them, knowing how it can feel far away even to people here in the United States or whatever country, and I'm sure it applies there as well. Mm-hmm. And it just makes sense.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind. And Padme's I refuse. She refuses to give into it.
Yeah,
she's amazing.
It's fantastic. Okay, I want to talk about another thing that I think you and I had talked about the first time we discussed this book, or maybe it was the second time we discussed this book. I don't know. It all blends together. But I want to talk about Mina Bonteri's conversations with the stranger, the person that she talks to on the comm. I want to know, who do you think she's speaking with in these private conversations? Is it potentially Dooku? Is it potentially Sidious? And how do you think that you know that it is who you think it is?
The first time, I thought it was Sidious.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the description just felt like that. And then the second time, there were some descriptors, and I'm forgetting the page number right now, but there was stuff that made me think it's definitely Dooku. And then I thought to myself, and I'm like, there is no way that Sidious would reveal himself to her, because she's just a senator.
Right.
Like, he is not talking to anyone but Dooku and the Trade Federation. He's not going to reveal his part in the plan to someone that isn't, already under his leash. So I think it's got to be Dooku.
I think you're right on. When I first read this, I thought it was Sidious as well, but you're absolutely right. There's no reason for him to reveal himself. And we do know that Mina Bonteri eventually does join the Separatists, which Dooku was the head of the Separatists, so it really does make sense. When you look at the lines that are said by this stranger themselves, one of them is, do as you must, but if you cannot control the situation, I will step in and control it for you. And the other one is just, see that you do, Senator. I think both of those sound like things that Dooku would say. Like, using the title of Senator, he's very formal always. Like, it sounds very much like Dooku.
Yeah. And he's like, I'll step in if I must. Sidious isn't going to do that
right?
Unless it's, something he would send his apprentice or something. He's not getting his hands dirty for any reason yet.
Exactly.
Before the Clone Wars.
I think the one line that kind of made it seem like, oh, maybe this is Sidious was on page 334, and it says that Padme stopped walking as Bonteri looked up and saw her. She thought a flash of fear might have gone through the other senator's eyes, but couldn't imagine what her friend would be afraid of. And so that might imply, like, this is someone to really be feared, like, potentially as Sidious. But you know what? After reading Dooku Jedi Lost and really knowing more and more about that character, Dooku's pretty fear-inspiring.
Great point. He's a scary man.
He is. That darn beautiful beard of his and his
Dookie.
swordplay skills. Okay.
He's so good in Battlefront.
He's so good in the silk pajamas.
You gotta.
All right, so it's time for Charles' stupid game here before we
Yes!
get to the epilogue. And basically, the framework of this game is that Padme had a profound impact on not just the initial formation of the rebellion in the Empire, but also in the fall of Anakin. And there are a ton of specific story points that had to play out exactly how they did to bring about the situation that we find ourselves in at the beginning of A New Hope, right? And we've kind of discussed that a little bit already here. But knowing that, I want to play a what-if game where we talk about what might have happened if some of those individual story points had played out differently. There's no right answer, obviously, but I'm just curious to hear what you think. And so
All right.
there are only a few, but point number one, we saw a lot of almost a tug of war for Padme's allegiances between Mon Mothma and Mina Bonteri. And they both represented potential mentors for Padme. And obviously, ultimately, Mon Mothma won. But how do you think things might have turned out differently if Padme had aligned with Mina Bonteri instead of Mon Mothma?
Ooh, I think she could have joined the Separatists.
Okay.
Because I think by the end of Revenge of the Sith, at least, I think we realize that she is seeing through the veil of the Republic into the Empire. Like, she knows she's too late. She knows democracy is dying. Right? That being said, I think she stays with Mina and vocally opposes Dooku in the Senate of the Separatists. I think there's a distinct chance that Dooku tries to assassinate her, even though she's on his own side. But if all of this happens, I don't think she and Anakin get together, and maybe the potential loss of her, doesn't exist, and he doesn't go down the dark side as quickly. Because at the end he says he wants to save Padme's life. That's the reason. So
you don't think Anakin would have had a different lover twins?
There may have been something. Well, because Padme, imprinted on him when he was 9. So I think that a decade later, oh, she's gone, man. Sorry, she's a Separatist now. Oh, bummer. Cool. Fight. I think it's a slightly different trajectory for our boy Anakin.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that she could join Mina, maybe be unaffiliated, maybe be like a Satine that wants to live between both and just kind of call them both out for their idiocy.
Yeah. I could see that.
Yeah.
I could definitely see. I mean, she basically says at the end of everything that maybe the Separatists were right, so I could see her being swayed that way, certainly. All right. Question number 2. I think that this one's a bit more interesting. What do you think would have happened if Sabe had actually managed to find and free Shmi Skywalker?
Oh man, I love that one. I think Padme goes to Tatooine, or Shmi comes to Naboo. She wouldn't bring her to Coruscant, I don't think. At least not immediately, right? I think she frees her, brings her on. I think that she maybe brings Shmi into her personal service. I mean, not as a handmaiden, maybe as come with me, live with me on Coruscant, be an aide to me, and then you can see your son whenever you want. Because that's the question too. The Jedi are supposed to stay away from their families. That's kind of a big thing,
right?
So I think that would have been a shakeup. But just knowing that she was alive might have been something.
Might Palpatine have gotten further involved to keep Shmi away from Anakin.
Ooh, yeah. Nah, he would have. Because he could try to keep her off the committee anyway. I think Palpatine maybe sends Maul to kill her?
Oh.
Does he go that far?
Oh my God.
You know? Or not Maul at that point, Dooku, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it would have had to be Dooku.
Does he send Dooku to kill her?
But imagine that backdrop in the duels between Anakin and Dooku. And it would make Anakin beheading him that much more sympathetic. I don't know. I mean, understandable.
Well, it's pure vengeance at that point.
It is. Yeah.
You know, which is also very dark. And maybe he goes through the same emotional journey of like, you know, I was too late to save you because I couldn't stop you from the Sith, so I need to be more powerful than any Sith. So I think that whole thing still works. But I definitely think Padme tries to bring Shmi in to her own personal employment in some way. Again, like frees her, but I think Shmi could be like, no, I'd love to come with you. It would be great. I'd love to see other planets. I never thought I'd leave Tatooine, and to be near my son, you know, would be beautiful.
Yeah,
so
I like it. I think that makes perfect sense.
The Jedi definitely don't let them live together, Anakin and Shmi.
No.
Like, they don't, you know, they're too stringent on that. But can you imagine if they were a little looser, bring Shmi in, let her work in the archives or something? Like,
yeah, I mean, Yoda might come in randomly and tell Anakin who his father is. I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you don't get that, go back and listen to our Dooku Jedi Lost Roundtable.
That's all he does.
Last what if question that I think is probably the most interesting of all of them. What if
hit me.
Padme survived childbirth?
It's so good. It's the best. I think she keeps Luke and Leia hidden. I think that definitely happens. If she keeps Luke and Leia hidden because of the safety, and she goes to the rebellion, and with Bail and Mon, and I think Sabe goes with her, and I think the two of them become a pillar of the rebellion. I think that there's also a distinct chance that maybe Padme goes and lives on Alderaan with Bail and Bria as like an attendant or something. It's like, or like an aunt to Leia. It's like, oh, this is your Aunt Padme. She's gonna, you know, help her out, so she can still help raise her and be near her, and maybe someday they tell her. But I think there is definitely something to her staying close and keeping tabs on her. But ultimately, she is. We end this book by Sabe finding all the plans that Padme had to revolutionize the universe and help the galaxy, and I think she becomes a freedom fighter with Bail and Mon, and she helps form everything the rebellion becomes. She's on missions. She's out in the field. She becomes the Leia of the resistance, essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that she accomplishes all these things through Leia, but I think that she would have been involved personally if she could have been. So,
yes,
absolutely fun thought experiment, but
very fun.
Let's move on from the what ifs of things that we know can't happen and talk about the what ifs of things that might happen. So Let's talk about this epilogue.
Let's.
We get Padme's funeral, and then after that scene, we get Sabe returning home to Tanra and being very distraught. And Tanra basically asks her a very simple question. He asks her, "What will you do?" And Sabe basically says, I'm going to find out what happened to my friend. Like, it's very simple, very matter of fact. Like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. Now, we understand that as readers, that getting to the bottom of that would mean understanding things that few people in the galaxy do. That would be understanding Palpatine. That would be understanding Vader and that he was Anakin and everything that happened on Mustafar. That would potentially mean understanding that Obi-Wan Kenobi is alive and in hiding with Luke Skywalker. And, you know, there's so much to unpack just from that statement that she makes, that she's going to find out what happened. Mm-hmm. Where do you think this is going? Because then we also get the call from Bail Organa, who says that he has a proposition for her, basically. And we don't know exactly what that means either. But where do you see all of this going?
My one major statement, because again, we try to manage expectations. I have thought about this for a year. I am solid in my opinion. I believe Sabe is the first agent of Fulcrum.
Oh.
I believe she starts the Fulcrum program. I believe she is the first agent. And I think Bail Organa is like her spy master at the start. And she is going on missions initially for her own selfish gain. Says like, I'll do this for you, but I'll build these contacts to the Rebel Alliance. But while I'm doing that, I'm searching for my friend and trying to figure out what happened this whole time. And
So-
Bail's like, deal.
So if Sabe is potentially involved in Fulcrum, would we have ever gotten the opportunity to see her and Ahsoka?
I think so. My dream is for this Cassian Andor show to be a Fulcrum show, essentially. That's like my pipe dream is that we don't have the title yet because the title is Star Wars Fulcrum.
Yeah.
And it's Cassian as a Fulcrum agent, which that is confirmed. We do know he was a Fulcrum agent. And it's him and Sabe and Ahsoka working under the guise of Bail Organa. And I
love that.
think that's
Take
where
my
it
money
goes.
now.
Yeah, exactly. That is my ultimate dream of dreams. Any future Star Wars project, that's what I want, because I believe the timing works out perfectly for all of them. They were all around at that point. We know Cassian was in Fulcrum. Boom. We see him and Bail in Rogue One together. We know Ahsoka was Fulcrum, and Bail Organa is in the Rebel Alliance and Rebels. And then at the end of this book, Sabe gets a phone call from Bail Organa a little bit before all of that. Like,
It fits.
it all fits. So I think earnestly that Sabe is using all her skills she has. She's an espionage agent already from the time she was 14 until now. It just makes sense for her to do it for the rebellion. And I think it's a perfect way, business-wise, if we want to go to the larger meta for Disney to bring in more prequels to the OT stuff. They like to weave stuff together. So yeah, get Keira Knightley in that show. That is what I think happens.
Well, if you can recast someone in the Star Wars universe, you could probably recast Sabe, but not Leia.
Probably,
but Sabe.
but hey, Keira Knightley would be like, sure, I'll do an episode or two. Bring her in.
Oh man, well, you know what? I hope you're right, man. I think that's a fantastic idea, and I know that Queen's Peril is more a prequel to Queen's Shadow, but maybe this is the middle chapter, and maybe there is going to be a sequel to this in a book form too. We don't know.
I mean, if we're getting a new Padme book every single year, great.
Bring it on.
I mean, all right, what if we had, because chronologically then it's Queen's Peril, Queen's Shadow. What if the next one, all right, here, dumb prediction time. The next one is going to be Queen's Legacy.
Oh.
And that'll be
love
next
it.
year. All right,
All
there
right,
you go.
You heard it
I'll
here
try to
first.
remember that I said it. Our listeners will remember so that when it's not that, you guys will immediately tell me in Discord.
They're not shy about telling us when we're wrong, and we thank them for that.
We do. We need to know.
Okay, well, so that rounds out all of my overarching questions, but as always, there are some fun facts and Easter eggs to run through here before we're done. So
Yes.
if you're prepared, let's start running through them.
Let's go.
All right, page 10, very first one that I caught, Veermoks are mentioned. And these are the creatures that Tarkin hunts on the planet Iriadu in the Tarkin novel.
Awesome.
So that's cool. Page 12, this is a great reference. It says, when they reached the grassy hill at the base of the wide stone stairs, Padme stopped to brush off her feet. They all halted with her. Sand, she said by way of explanation.
I hate
It's so coarse. Ugh.
It's irritating. Not like
right.
you. You're so smooth.
Oh, moving on as quickly as humanly possible. Page 37.
Where are you
Padme
going?
mentions Padme mentions that she supported Jamilia as the next queen of Naboo, but that she lost the election to Raylata. Now, we know that Jamilia ultimately wins the next election because Padme meets with her in Attack of the Clones when she is the queen. So that's just
Yeah.
a nice little reference.
Perseverance. There you go.
Page 41, Five Blossom Bread is mentioned as the celebratory dish for Sasha's election into the Legislative Assembly. In Season 2, Episode 4 of the Clone Wars, Senate Spy, Padme mentions that Five Blossom Bread is one of her specialties.
Fantastic.
So that's cool. Page 48, here's a quote for you. "It's easy to make light of it now that the troubles have passed," Bibble said, uncharacteristically serious. Really? Uncharacteristic? Have we ever seen C.O. Bibble be anything but serious? I want to run through some of his most famous quotes of like his 5 lines in the prequels. Here we go. "A communications disruption can mean only one thing: invasion. Number 2, the death toll is catastrophic. We must bow to their wishes. You must contact me. Number 3, it's unthinkable. There hasn't been a full-scale war since the formation of the Republic." Oh, yeah, he's a barrel of laughs, Eric. He's a goof.
Always down for a pint, that guy.
Okay, moving on from Bibble, my absolute
Bibble,
favorite.
I can't do shots. It's a Tuesday. Come on!
Oh, life of the party. Page 67, we spend some time with Padme's parents, and we talked about that before, but, you know, they're straight up out of the deleted scenes for Attack of the Clones, so that was fun. Random little thing here. All of the Holo News clips that were in the audiobook version of this, which I had never heard before. This was the first time that I listened to the audiobook. I got such a Pokemon TV show vibe from those. Did you?
Oh,
you know what I'm
sure.
talking about?
Wow.
With like the little digital music in the background, and like it literally sounded like the narrator at the beginning of every Pokemon episode. But okay, that was just a random thing I had to throw out there. I know we have some
Spectacular.
Pokemon fans in the listening audience as well.
Totally.
All right, page 82. It's revealed that people light incense on Naboo every year in remembrance of those who fell to fight off the Trade Federation. And Padme specifically says that she lights some incense for Qui-Gon Jinn every year. I thought that was beautiful. Some love for Qui-Gon.
Yeah, I mean, the relationship they had in that movie was so quick, but it was clearly so impactful, and I love that little note. Didn't have to dwell on it, but just mentioned it.
Yeah, it's those tiny little things that tie all these things together. Like on page 113, when Rick Ollier is mentioned, Sabe supposedly acquired her ship at his recommendation. And, of course, you'll remember Ollier as the pilot who flew the Queen's Royal Starship off of Naboo during her rescue from the Trade Federation forces. Yeah. So,
and we thought it was going to be such a big deal for Episode 1 because he had the toy. He was like the first toy line. He was one of the initial releases.
And he had 2 lines or so. But that's okay. We love him anyways.
We didn't hit it. Oh, man.
All right, the next thing I want to bring up is I don't have a page number for you, but just a question, just a casual question for you, and that is, where the actual hell did Nani go in this story? Every other senator in the entire Senate has a Nani droid, and Padme goes in for repair once and literally just never comes back for the rest of the entire book, which is like a year of like in-universe time.
I know thought this too last year, but I realized she got R2. That was her thing. She switched to R2.
I know, but everyone else has one. Like Bale has one.
I know, but they're lame. Hers tried to kill her.
That's fair.
She got an R2. Oh, nice Nani. I have an astromech. That was a hero at the Battle of Naboo.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, on page 240, R2-D2 plays a really big role. And I loved this because R2 carries the handmaiden suitcases to the ship. And that really got me because he's the hero of Naboo, the handiest droid in the galaxy, and now he's a bellhop. And I just thought that was great.
It's like in Solo when Chewie is carrying the coaxium. And at the end, it's like, here you go, Chewie, carry the heavy stuff.
Yeah. That's why we're here. Okay, page 115. We do get a mention of Watto and Shmi, and Sabe just calls Watto the junk trader. But we know exactly who she's talking about. And you know I love me some Watto.
Yeah. He's the best.
He is the best. All right, page 170. This is probably my favorite Easter egg that I picked up on, and I only picked up on it because I was listening to the audiobook. But there's a Naboo guard named Corrin. Yes.
I totally missed that.
Now, it's spelled differently. I checked in the book. It's spelled Corin, but that has got to be an intentional shout out to Corin Horn. I refuse to believe anything other than that.
Gotta be. Oh my God,
Okay.
Corey must have lost his mind. He must have been so happy.
It's a good thing Corey's not here for that one. Page 177, Anaconda Farr, a.k.a. Uncle Anno, makes an appearance, and we know him well from his
Anno.
appearances on the Clone Wars television series, most
Yeah.
memorably when he is poisoned, but that's okay.
Yeah,
He
it's a
still
rough
made
look
his
for him.
appearance. Yeah, it was a tough day. It's a tough day. Page 181 is my personal favorite line in the entire book, and I quote, "It was a remarkable relief to wear pants."
Hell yes.
Indeed, it must have been. Okay,
It has
page
to be.
198. The entire Sabe and Tanra hookup scene really, it made me laugh. It made me laugh, and I'm going to tell you why. I read it the first time I read the book, and it was spicy. It really was.
Yeah,
It was.
it's a spicy scene.
It is. But I just have to say, when listening to the audiobook, I want you to go back and check me on this, but I swear to you, as that scene closes, they play the Imperial March in the background.
Oh, they do. They totally do. Because you know why?
What?
Sex is the devil, Charles. It's sinful.
Oh, man. I rewound it and listened to it like 3 times, and I went and told Nicole about it, and she doesn't care. But that's how, like,
You gotta
how
know.
funny that was. I had to tell someone immediately.
Oh yeah, I remember. That was one of those. I was listening to it while I was like washing dishes. I put an external speaker. No, I was finishing up washing dishes, and I had like low light in the kitchen, and like the light was just a little low, and then the scene started, and I was like, oh, like it was a nice little moment.
And then your girlfriend walks in and is like, "What are you doing?"
Like, nothing. I'm not listening to audiobooks.
Oh,
And Sabe
man.
can get it, man. Sabe, run me over with a truck. Go ahead. I'll thank you for it. My God. Whew.
Oh, and the potential outcome of what happens in that scene, having babies. Page 272, Padme says she can't imagine having twins. Oh, another heartbreaking
Seems
moment.
terrible.
You
Seems
can-
terrible, doesn't it?
You can imagine it, and it happens.
Yeah.
All right, page 293. When discussing how to save the planet of Bromlark, moisture farms are brought up as a potential solution. I thought that was fantastic. Page 309, Padme is speaking about the people of Malastare, and she says they want political power. Their senator was not elected chancellor when Valorum was unseated, and they've been backsliding ever since. And that is, of course, backed up by the Phantom Menace. When Panaka announces that Palpatine was nominated for chancellor, he also says that Bail Antilles of Alderaan and Ainley Team of Malastare were also nominated. So it's just one of those throwaway comments from the Phantom Menace that we see expounded upon in this book. So another
You
fantastic
can imagine
callback.
how many times she must have watched The Phantom Menace to research this book.
1,000.
So
Not
many.
enough. The real answer is not
That's
enough
true.
time.
She didn't even have Disney Plus yet. It was just
You're
a Blu-ray.
right. The pre-Disney Plus life. It was a sad time.
It was.
Page 323, we're almost through. Padme leaned back in her chair while the Navicomputer did its work. She liked this part of traveling, the breath before the plunge into the full deepness of space. It reminded her how big the galaxy was and how lucky she was to live in it. And I thought that was a little wink from E.K. Johnston, kind of saying that we're all lucky to escape into this galaxy far, far away. In that moment that we
love
all have
that.
as fans, where you do hold your breath when you know you're about to make that jump into hyperspace.
Yeah, there was something we mentioned on our last podcast, now that I remember, that I haven't quite mentioned yet. And I just wanted to say it real quick.
Yeah.
This book, to me, is the most calm and relaxed I've ever felt reading a Star Wars book. And I think just because of the content, the writing, I mean, not to say there aren't high stakes to it. It's not unexciting. But my mind feels so at ease reading this book. And it's kind of like slipping into a warm bath as you read it, because I do feel like I'm entering another kind of realm of existence as you read, because you're getting to enter this world that is filled with so much beauty, like especially the scenes on Naboo and Alderaan, you know? And it's really kind of what you need, especially if you're going through like an anxious time in your life. This book is so good for transporting you through that hyperspace into a calming area. And just a quick shout out for those powers that it has.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we read a lot of these books to escape, and this is certainly a great one for that. All right, last one I have to bring up here, page 332. Mon Mothma is speaking to Padme, and she says, "You might consider adding an official representative to your delegation in the Senate." And Padme responds, "I'll think about it. Actually, I have just the being in mind." And we know she's talking about Jar Jar. How nice was it to have just a quick little shout out to Jar Jar, some Jar Jar love in a prequel novel? It's got to be there.
Wonderful.
It's got to be
there. Love our
there.
Jar Jar representation.
More Jar Jar, more Ahmed Best. I'm down for it. But that does it. Those are the Easter eggs and the fun facts that I caught this second time through. And so I think we have to wrap up here, Eric. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to drop on me? And after you give those, why don't you re-rate the book on a 1 to 10?
Sure. I mean, we've been through so much of it, and there's still, I mean, there's really so much in this book. It's a lovely, it's dense while not being dense. You know, it is full, I guess. That's my thing. It's a full book. I really like all these characters, and I was very happy, again, without giving anything away, to go back to some of these characters in Queen's Peril. I really love this direction we're going in with getting more Padme content. I mean, every new thing we get about her, I love her more and more. And I think even just talking about this book again, I'm like, I'm probably going to reread this book again someday, you know, which I think is the highest praise you can give it, along with, as we've said, making us want to watch The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. So it's a must-read for any Padme fan.
I love that.
And to re-rate, as we remember, I gave this book an 8.5 on my initial ranking, I believe. You know what? Based on my excitement, I'm going to bump it up to a 9. I am. I think just... The only knocks I give it is that I don't love all the stuff with the final the Bromlark stuff. Like it's good, but I'm reading it for the Padme characterization and the handmaiden stuff, which is the reason we focused on it so much. But whenever I think of this book, I get happy. Whenever I think about the continuation of the story, I get excited. And for that reason, I'm going to bump it up to a 9. I think I've really, really enjoyed it. So glad we did this reread. Charles, what about you?
I am too. Just to give my final thoughts quickly, I want to reflect on the fact that I did not enjoy this book the first time I read it. And I think that I fell into the trap that the handmaidens set on everyone else in the galaxy. I saw this book and I thought I saw it for what it was, and I didn't. There's so much more within the covers of this book than I gave it credit for. And when I really took a minute and looked deeper, I found all of those things. And I think there is a lot more here than I realized the first time around. And I think it's probably the case for a lot of people that read this book. So I would encourage everyone out there who may have written this book off because it's about Padme or because it's a young adult novel or whatever the case may be, don't fall into that trap. Give this book a try. Really give it an honest shot. Give it your attention. And I think that it will really live up to the expectations that you probably have for it. So, you know, I gave this a 7.6 the first time around. And that's funny that I gave it a 7.6. But I can't deal with these decimals anymore. I'm going to bump it up to an 8. This is a much better book than I gave it credit for. And I'm really excited to get to Queen's Peril and everything else that we get down the line from both E.K. Johnston and from the character of Padme. So with all of that being said, I think that's a wrap on part 2 of the Queen Shadow Roundtable. The curse of Queen Shadow has officially been broken, and I just want to say thank you to all of our patrons who helped to make that happen.
No question. And speaking of those patrons and speaking of E.K. Johnston, Corey and I mentioned this on our latest Bounty Hunt episode, but I wanted to clue our patrons in, and you, Charles, in on some upcoming content from The Living Force.
Yeah.
We ran a poll recently with our patrons to ask, what do you want our next patron goal to be? And we gave a couple different options. And our top vote getters were, number 1, A Lost Stars Roundtable.
Love it.
By Claudia Gray. And number 2 was Ahsoka by E.K. Johnston Roundtable. So, whether those will be dependent on patron numbers, whether those will be just later in the year, we will announce, but I can definitely say we loved coming back to this book. We loved going back to an earlier novel in a roundtable format, and this was definitely a test to see if we could do it, and I think it passed our levels of enjoyment, if nothing else. So we will definitely be going back to bringing you more roundtables on at least canon novels that we haven't done so far, and I couldn't be more excited. But my friends, with that, truly, truly thank you for listening to this week's episode of The Living Force. Again, if you're new to this show, please subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts and tune in each week where we're going to be talking some Star Wars. If you want to buy this book, or you want to pre-order Queen's Peril, or do anything else, you want to support us, go to utini.com, click the Amazon link on the book profile, and we'll get a few cents to help keep our lights on. If you'd like to help support us directly, you can find us on patreon.com/utini, or on TeePublic, where you can get a number of shirts, including our handmaiden shirt, We Are Brave, that I am wearing actually at this exact moment. A special thank you, as always, to Adam Dyson and Patrick Ortiz on our Jedi High Council, and Timothy Dunlap on our Alliance High Command for their amazing support. You can find us on Twitter individually. I am at Eric Eilerson, Charles is at C. Hankel, Corey is at Doc Star Wars MD. A special thank you, as always, to Matt Davenport, our amazing editor, Freddie, our producer, and Wes, our community manager. Thank you to Charles for podcasting with me. And remember, my friends, we are brave.
There is no hatred. There is joy. There is no division. There is union. There is no apathy. There is passion. There is no gatekeeping. There is community. This is the Utini Star Wars Fan Code. Embrace it, live by it, and above all, trust in the living force. That's all for this week. Join our community and surround yourself with like-minded fans by visiting us online at utini.com. Until next time, may the force be with you.